So yes, naturally, this is the next question. So I'll start with you, Mary. Do you find there are inconsistencies in the understanding and expectations of LOD? What conversations can be had in the start of meetings to assess this so that we're all on the same page?
Yeah, I think it's really important to have that good conversation upfront at our first coordination meeting to really put that out there through either the BIM execution plan or what I'm proposing is a BIM memo, a shortened version of it. But I think ultimately, more than putting a number to the LOD, we want to make sure that people are putting the design intent and then all the elements, that they're using the correct element to represent what it is that they're modeling. No workarounds, use the proper element. And so depending on the discipline, there might be, the word LOD just for generic modeling that we use up front, and that can be converted into a higher level item. For us in architecture, we have sort of our basic wall boundaries in the different areas, and then those walls become further developed. But we're expecting, what the typical size and placing would be, allowing for that future development in the stages. So I think the most important thing for us is model the element with the correct family.
Yeah, generic models. How about you?
So we're building a campus site with LOD, whenever we start a project, our kind of mainstay standard is LOD. And that varies between disciplines, right? When I'm doing building mechanical, a lot of the vendors we use have Revit models. Some of the biggest libraries of building mechanical, right? Probably electrical as well. So people are like, you don't need to use vendor, you can just draw a box for that. Well, it's much faster for me to go and grab the vendor model that I know we're going to be using, put that in. It's not taking up that much more space or data. We make sure that we vet any models that we put in. So sometimes some disciplines will look like a bit of a higher LOD than others. It just depends on what we need to show at the end of the day or what models we're using. But as people were saying at the beginning of the project at the BEP, you need to define that, because if it's a design build and we're working with the contractor, we need to know, you need to be on board with the level of detail we're giving them the end product, right? So
I think it's very easy for it to get muddled. I'm working on a project where the LOD has changed a couple of times. Different sections of the building are going to be this level of detail versus the other areas. And that has caused a lot of confusion internally and externally. People have different expectations of what it's going to look like, even though this is what it was specified to be as. It's no longer following that, and it's changed. And so the definitions that we even gave at the beginning are almost pointless.
Well, so you have a client that changes their mind.
Yeah.
Can you give us a rendering of that? We want to show it for like an open house.
Yeah.
Boxes. Yeah. If you haven't done that, they don't understand sometimes.
And just to talk in there, I think that is one of the important conversations I'm with the client from the general contract stage, what their overall expectation of the life cycle of the model, what purposes of the model, what purposes say on use it. It's not just construction drawings and construction process, but for visualization of the life cycle and stuff.
And the cost associated with that.
Exactly. Yeah.
People don't realize how much it's going to cost particularly for structural, for us to model every single beam and joist, we'd be spending a lot more time on blocks than if we're just doing our sort of standard. But I'll give Vince's answer right now. Get a little similar to that. So huge discrepancies. The biggest one is that LOD is not a number for a whole project. It is an element by element status that changes as the project progresses. We might model structural concrete at LOD 300 at the beginning of CD stage, but not model the concrete topping on podiums that fall. The location of slopes of those slabs will change constantly. So we model based on the underside of slab and minimum slab thickness. Toppings can be modeled by the architect, so they have control over slopes and elevations. Our wood joist framing is 100 all through. you can't rely on it until wood shop drawings have been done by the supplier. And that's where coordination for the full element is done. We might have shear wall inflows be 100 through 75%, then 300 beyond that. We want to strictly control where that element is placed. We model it accurately. A model element table is vital for understanding this. It's also important to keep in mind. We can model to LOD 300 on everything, but if coordination is done when it's installed or at shop drawing stage, then why should we charge the client to model or take a loss if the client won't pay for that added effort? So if shop drawings are being done to coordinate joists and beams, we're not gonna model it. That's come later somehow. So.
We rarely see model element tables, and I can only think of a handful of projects where we've had model element tables introduced at the beginning of the project, and I'd like to see that on every project almost, so it's a clear understanding.
I think if it's really like, I think you do have to get a little granular with it, especially with like every discipline has different needs to meet this expectation that I think it would be helpful if we start at meetings to like to push to be a little granular. But that's my perspective. I don't know if anyone agrees.
But we use 40 images, right?
Yeah.
On larger jobs, and they can be
Yeah.
super grand to a point where it's just too much. It's just not enough.
Right. Right.
Yeah, on the bigger projects, it's a long conversation, but
Yeah.
it's one that we
Yeah. And she's clears it out.
have a lot of expectations. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know what you think about that, Rob.
So as a general contractor, we follow informed document. And with different consultants, we have the different definition. And for us, it creates confusion. And our only request is that general contractor should provide early feedback in the project. So that, as you mentioned, it's really hard to provide detailed elements like joist and all. But if you can provide those line items within LOD metrics, it will be helpful for us so that when we are further developing those LOD metrics for our subcontractors, we can ask the right questions.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.